incredible entrepreneurs, hopefully such as yourselves, to support them in their journey of building something world-changing. Having been on the startup side of things, I think I bring a lot of those skills and lessons to VC, including, like I mentioned before, the importance of emotional intelligence and the softer skills in building and scaling a company. It's also been an interesting lesson for me in understanding how someone can be within the entrepreneurial world and sphere without actually being a founder. So I'm in it, but I'm not a founder of a company. I want to invite all of you to think about how you can be an entrepreneur, whether starting a company in the tech space, a small business, a nonprofit, or even lifestyle decision like my family's. I want to invite all of you to think about how you can be entrepreneurially adjacent, like I am, whether that's through being a VC or working at a startup. We need all of you to be entrepreneurs through taking on risk and creating something out of nothing, to be founders of companies and organizations both big and small. New business is the lifeblood of the world. And I have a feeling that a lot of it is getting started right here in this room at this event. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Nargia, for that really inspiring speech. I know I definitely learned a lot. We'd like to now invite Justin Kang back to the stage for a Fireside chat with Nargia.
No. It's very suspenseful.
Yeah.
Welcome to our Fireside chat. Can we give it up again for Anarnia right there for sharing all her stories and celebrating her parents' 25 years? I really like that. And I really resonate with a lot of your story coming from immigrant parents. And when I told my mom I was going to be a VC a couple years ago, she cried, still hoping that I would go to law school, and I'm 36. So
my parents think I'm an accountant. So.
Oh yeah, my mom had to get a friend who could speak English to translate, and I don't think there's a Korean word for venture capital. So, well, I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to leave it up to the audience to ask some even more thoughtful questions. But beginning, what I appreciated of your conversation of just the expansiveness of entrepreneurs, and you talked about some traits of around emotional intelligence. As you talk to hundreds of entrepreneurs, are there any singular traits that define what makes a great entrepreneur, regardless of whether they're nonprofits or high tech or small business, that you sort of always look for in terms of this is what makes a great entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a great question. A couple things come to mind, and I'll tell you, we have something called the CEO scorecard that we use at Maveron. It's a structured way that we can assess a founder's emotional intelligence or softer skills and really understand what are their superpowers, what are their weaknesses. And I'll call out founders and CEOs and entrepreneurs. I mean, everyone is going to have weaknesses. I'm going to invest in founders even when they have weaknesses, but it's important to know what they are so that we go in aware, we help them kind of surround themselves with people to help support those weaknesses. So going back to your question, the first thing I would say is storytelling. Can you tell a great story, regardless of what organization you're starting or running? Can you get people on board your bus by telling a compelling, thoughtful story that really paints the vision of what you want to build? The second one I would say is integrity. I mean, running a business, you're making tons of decisions every day. Can you do those and make those decisions doing the right thing, knowing that you're not taking shortcuts, and knowing that you're doing right by your people, your team, your customers, whoever they are, the constituents? And third, I would say, is grit. Building a company is really, really hard. Any kind of organizations, the highs can be really high, but the lows can be really, really low. Can you be gritty and tenacious enough to power through? And the last thing I would say is what I like to call product founder fit. So many of you have probably heard of product market fit, pretty common term that's used. We talk about product founder fit. You could call it product organization or founder organization fit. So I ask, why are you the person to build this? Do you have a personal connection to this? Maybe you studied this in school. Maybe your family has been impacted by this specific issue. Whatever it may be, I like to see that the founder has a connection to what they're building.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how many entrepreneurs are here, aspiring entrepreneurs? Okay,
Great.
Good amount of people. And I assume a lot of you are trying to understand what VC is. Thank you so much for explaining sort of the high-level concepts, but maybe we could sort of just walk through, if someone wanted to pitch you, it's not just like, hey, give me some money, and you're like, yeah, there's a process, right? There's a diligence process. And for ourselves, we do 45 investments a year, and we do essentially an application process. From what I understand, you do 1 to 2 a year.
Yeah.
So how many deals do you see, and how do you decide on that 1 or 2 deals that you do, and even the negotiations of that?
Yeah, so I see hundreds of companies through the year. I invest in 1 or 2 every year. So it's a really small number. We're very concentrated. We're on our 8th fund, so we have 1 through all the way to 8, and each fund is about $180 to $200 million. So our 8th fund is $225. We're in the early days of that fund. We've made 2 investments, and each fund will have a total of, say, 20-ish companies. So we'll deploy that fund over the next couple of years. So I will do 1 or 2 investments, and I have 5 other partners who I work with, and they'll do 1 or 2 other investments. The process. So you might have already heard this, but a warm intro is really a key way to really get into a venture capital or venture capitalist store. So you want to go through your network, through your connections. I think someone earlier mentioned they were kind of coaching the group on the importance of your network, the importance of your connection. You never know how that's going to come about. I mean, I'm here today because Avital, who's organizing this event, went to high school with me. So you never know how all of it is coming together. But try to get that warm intro to the VC. It really kind of opens up that door. And that warm intro could come through a number of different ways. You could meet someone here who could connect you. You could maybe respond to a blog post or a podcast that you see and kind of network with the person through there. You may go through your LinkedIn, through your university, a number of other things. Once you get that connection, the initial meeting is usually 30, 45-minute pitch where you as the founder are sharing your story with me, oftentimes walking me through a deck that you've made to really help guide the conversation. And then after that, if there's kind of mutual interest on both sides, following up with questions, answers, having the conversation go. The industry has shifted a lot in the last few months, as Justin, I'm sure you're seeing, where it's gone from a very strong, raging bull market to more of a bear market. So processes are slower. I'm getting to know founders over a few weeks, lots of back and forth questions. You may have something called a data room, which has all your information about the business in there, including your financials, your team, projections, all of those things. I will be digging deep into those, building my own models, and having a conversation and a dialogue. I'm investing at the early stage, so like seed and Series A, so there may not be a ton of data to look at, so a lot of it is betting on you, your team, your model, your idea, so I want to get to know you, really understand what makes you special and unique and why I should, give you $6 or $7 million. But I think you called out an important thing, which is it's not as straightforward as just being like, hey, I have a business, write me a $4 million check, let's go. We're doing a ton of diligence to make sure that we can make a big return on your money. To give you a sense, we want every single business that we invest in to have the capability to return our fund. So if we own 15-ish%, we need the businesses that we invest in to exit at $1 billion. So they either go public or they get acquired for a huge outsized return. And so that's the calculus that we're doing is, does this business have the ability to go from pretty much 0 to $1 billion?
And how do you just make a decision? Is it you like, I'm convinced I'm going to make a check, or do you have to get consensus with your partners?
Good question. Yeah, and that's a good question because each VC firm is going to vary. We don't need consensus, so if I want to do a deal, I can do a deal. That being said, we're a very small, high-trust unit. So I'm going to listen to my 5 other partners. If they're like neutral-ish and I really like the deal, I'll do it. But if they're like calling out key red flags or yellow flags that they're really worried about, I'm going to listen and I'm going to trust them. And I work with them because I trust them. So they may have some kind of knowledge or some kind of insight that's raising a yellow flag for them that's going to pick up my ears, and I'm going to say, I'm going to reconsider. Maybe I'm not going to do this investment.
I think I'll do one more question and then turn over to the audience, if I'm reading this correctly. And, I assume also people in this room how many people want to be a venture capitalist?
Nobody. Oh, one person.
Okay, that's awkward.
Go.
All right, well, that's how we do every day of our lives. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, maybe I'll throw away the question. But I think it is unique to say.
It's actually good. More business for us.
Yeah, exactly.
More entrepreneurs in the audience.
I do anticipate some of you.
Competition.
Some of you, yeah, exactly. There you go. Some of you will want to become venture capitalists because it's a nice lifestyle and very fun. But with that being said, I think it's really cool. For myself, I started a fund with two of my friends. You rose through the ranks. You mentioned in your talk, senior associate to general partner, and a general partner has governance, fiduciary responsibilities of the fund, right? It's not just a title, there's some legal implications there. So just how did you get, you did well, you got promoted, like what is it like going from senior associate to, I imagine, principal to senior to general partner?
Yeah, so again, each firm is going to vary, but for us, senior associate role, 75, 80% of your job is what we call sourcing, and sourcing means going out and finding companies. So that could be everything from doing a ton of networking, going to events, meeting founders, going to conferences like this, and engaging with entrepreneurs. It can involve outbound, like writing a blog post and seeing what are the kinds of interesting companies that come in based on that blog post. So soliciting applications can be a number of different ways for sourcing. As I rose in the ranks, the responsibility shifted. How did I rise in the ranks? Really, for us, it's about, can you replicably find high quality deals and a high quantity of them? So can you show that you're bringing in a ton of new business, and over time, the quality of them gets better and better and better, and your own filter gets better? So you're bubbling up really good deals to the partners. If the partners think they're interesting and they dig into those deals, great. If they actually invest in one of those companies, even better. And if one of those companies does well, that's kind of the gold standard. So that's kind of the process of getting there. And once you kind of do that for one or two companies, took 2-3 years, you can get promoted to principal. Principal or junior partner is when you can write your own checks. So you're kind of early days of writing a small check here and there, starting to build your own muscles around that. Can you be a good board member? Can you actually gain the conviction and kind of confidence to both want to do a deal, but also have the gravitas to go win the deal? I mean, it's competitive. And does the founder want to work with you? Do they opt into you? And then finally, once some of those start, gaining legs and going well, you become a general partner. And then the reason I say gaining legs is, as Justin can tell you, this is a long journey business. So I may invest in something today and it may go up and down and up and down, which is going to be you, the entrepreneur, going up and down and up and down until the result of this business, until it goes public or gets acquired or something kind of happens to create the official outcome. And that can take 5, 7, 10 years.
I think now we have some questions from the audience. I believe there are a microphone here and a microphone there. So we welcome people to go up there and to respectfully ask their questions.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right.
No VCs, but a lot of questions.
Yeah, no VCs. My goodness. Yeah, exactly. Let's start right. We'll go 1, 2 this way, please.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my question is more about VC. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah.
So I assume that as venture capitalists, you endeavor in a lot of different fields, right? So I feel like, but you also have to do like in-depth analysis for each company in order to know that whether it is actually undervalued, and you have to like go in at this point. So how do you learn different fields in a relatively fast amount of time? That's my question.
Start.
Yeah, I'll start because we're a pre-seed fund, meaning we have very basically no data to sort of evaluate companies from a company perspective. And normally you'll see most pre-seed funds being industry agnostic, so we very much don't have a strong industry expertise. It's a great job to learn a lot about different industries, but we make sure our value proposition is clear, is that we're not like industry-specific helpful resources. As you, I think, get into later stage funds, they'll have more of like an industry or specific thesis than others. But for us, we very much believe in the founder exclusively, and rarely do we sort of analyze the market or the industry, just because there's just no data points there. And you'll sort of see that, I think, as the difference of stages.
Yeah, so I'll give a different answer, which is, so my fund is consumer broadly. We invest in anything consumer facing. And then within the 6 check writing partners, each of us has like what I would say like one major and maybe a minor. So it allows us to kind of go deep into a specific space. So one of my partners does like all our e-commerce stuff. So he did eBay back in the day, and then Allbirds, Everlyn, things like that. I don't do any e-commerce. I do all our consumer healthcare practice, which allows me to kind of go deep. That being said, healthcare is very broad, and I'm doing everything from mental health, rare disease, women's health, reproductive health, pediatrics. One thing I love about the VC job is it is very academic in orientation. Like one of my favorite parts of the job is to just read and dig in and learn, and I feel lucky that I get paid to learn. How do I do it? It depends, right? I may spend an entire quarter digging into, right now I'm spending a bunch of time understanding the Medicare space. So I may spend the next 2 quarters understanding Medicare and then mapping out the white space in Medicare. So where are there opportunities to build businesses? So I do everything from read articles, read books, talk to experts, just again, network and talk, listen to a bunch of content, start to form my own thesis, and then go talk to people and like understand where I'm wrong. So there's a number of different ways in doing it. There's like paid organizations where you can talk to an expert. So I do a lot of that. So it's just a bunch of like research and learning.
All right, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
More people want to be a VC now. So
Yeah, exactly.
get paid to learn.
Yeah, up our numbers here.
From 1 to 3.
Yeah, hello, I'm Nick. I was wondering about like questions about emotional intelligence. You said your first company failed because there was lack of trust and teamwork.
Yeah.
How do you build that in yourself and in your team?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of it has to start with the leadership. And if the founder or founders of the company are not role modeling that from day one, it just trickles into the rest of the company. So how do you do it? The first and most important way, I think, is to have a set of mission, vision, and values. You'd be astounded the number of organizations that don't have a mission and they don't have a set of values. We at Mavron, my firm, we have values. We have 4 values that we iterate at the beginning of every partner meeting. We talk about at our quarterly like offsites, and we really try to live by those every day. And I encourage companies to do that as well. Because if you have your values, you can have guiding principles. And the values may be everything from, we trust one another. Like one of our values is relationships over transactions, which is basically we value relationships and the longevity of relationships over one-time transactions. So we're not going to do a shortcut for a one-time thing if it's going to harm a long-term relationship. So if a company can establish these values, they can operate by them and they can kind of put them into the rest of the employees. And a lot of times, companies get values mixed up with perks. So they may say, oh, our culture is like, we have free coffee and we do happy hours on Fridays and everyone gets pizza on Tuesdays. That's not values, that's not culture. Culture and values is how do you treat each other? How do you approach problems? How do you make tough decisions? Like what is your guiding principle in tough decisions? And I think establishing those from day one is key.
Awesome. Thank you. Great
All
question.
right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Over here.
Thank you for the great talk. I'm intrigued about the CEO scorecard that you mentioned because you seem to get a lot of details about the founders. Like you also mentioned the emotional intelligence of the founders.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how do you get all this data? Do you conduct surveys? Do you talk to them? Do you conduct qualitative interviews? So
Yeah.
what is the mechanism behind that?
Yeah, we talk to them a lot. One of my partners, in fact, he goes all the way back to high school and he asks them, like, what activities did you do in high school? Did you have any leadership opportunities in high school? There's no right or wrong answer. Maybe someone was a varsity soccer player, and maybe someone was president of the UN club, and maybe someone didn't do extracurriculars, but they had 5 siblings at home and they helped manage the whole sibling set. It just depends. There's no right or wrong answer, but we really want to go back and really understand who they are, what motivates them, And I think most importantly, how do they act and operate under conflict, under tension, under stressful situations? Because as a founder, that's going to happen over and over again. So one, spend a bunch of time with the founder, interview them, understand them, ask questions. Two, we do a lot of references. I was telling Justin earlier, because I'm doing 1 or 2 investments a year, I really want to understand who I'm going to be on a board with, who I'm going to effectively be in a relationship for the next 5, 7, 10 years. So I'll do references, people they worked with, people they reported to, people who reported to them, people they might have been in a club or a nonprofit organization with, and really get underneath that. And then what I like to do is spend like non-official pitch time with them. So we may go get coffee, we may go get lunch. You know, if they like to do an activity, like they're into bocce ball, maybe we'll go play bocce ball and I'll see what they're like in like a casual setting. So it's a lot of time.
Thank you.
We'll have one more time for the last question, but we will stay afterwards to answer anyone that wants to talk one-to-one.
Hi, my name is Surabhi and I'm a student. I have a question from the perspective of aspiring entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs, we might come up with like 10, 15 ideas like all the time. You guys see hundreds or dozens of ideas all the time. How do you really identify when an idea is good and when it's actually worth pursuing or investing in?
Tell me your answer, because I'll use it.
We have a very simple, for us, because we invest in pre-seed, we rarely look at the idea specifically. We look at the founder and their background and sort of their past ability to create, because we have an open application process. We just got 2,000 applications for our most recent accelerator, and so many of the ideas are the same actually, right? So for us, we try not to sort of gauge the interest of the idea and the excitement for that, but really try to get to know the founder first. Then please, if you want to add on to it.
Yeah, I think that is so key. And you look at, businesses that effectively, did the same thing. You have like Hotmail and Gmail, you have Yahoo and Google, like businesses that effectively do the same thing, but one is going to just skyrocket and surpass the other, and one is going to have the ability to be nimble and change with the ages. And so what does that come down to? It comes down to the founder, right? If you look at like Netflix and Blockbuster, like what a great example of 2 businesses that effectively did the same thing. But Blockbuster saw it as a let me give you movies business, and Netflix saw it as a let me entertain you business, which is very different because they adapted with the times and entertained people in different ways versus being stuck to the form factor of VCRs and then DVDs. So we definitely look at founders. And then, for us, we're also thinking through like what kind of business has the ability to be really outsized? Like how can it be a huge business? So we'll look at what we call the TAM, or the total addressable market. And we'll say, okay, like this many people in America or this many people in the world may be a potential customer. So maybe you're building a business and it's for, this specific demographic, people who like to play tennis who are in their 20s. Okay, so that's the specific TAM right there. But then we want to understand, like, again, this goes back to founder. Is the founder good enough, smart enough, visionary enough to expand the TAM? So can they then start earning the right to build this business for more and more people? So
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Let's give it another round of applause for Anargia for her time today. And I believe I will turn it back to our fearless MCs. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's give it up for one more round for Justin and Argia. All right.
Thanks to Justin for facilitating the conversation, and thank you, Anargia, for your keynote, and thanks to all of you for the great questions, and thank you for making IdeaCon 2023 so incredible.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of thanks, hundreds of people don't just gather here on a Saturday in this auditorium. Over 100 people have been working since February to make today possible, and while I won't read all 100 names, we'd like to have a